Hi everyone. So sometimes we forget why we made a decision few weeks ago, and sometimes people who made the decision move on. In these scenarios, how do we keep a track of decisions made regarding your products? Let's dive in. So today I'm going to talk about a tool called Product Decision Record. It's a very simple tool. It's a very simple document that you can maintain. And if others have been maintaining, read them and refer to them on regular basis. So what does this document have and what kind of shapes it can take and how it can benefit you? So let me start again by sharing my screen. Product Decision Record. I think it's a very important tool. And the reason I specify enterprise product managers is because in enterprises, I've noticed that decisions have a lot of context, which are not necessarily confined to the scope of the product. There are a lot of organizational reasons, and people do change jobs a lot, and people do move within the organization, and many times these information get lost. Or someone who has been managing a product for a long time ends up having a lot of knowledge in their mind, which makes it very difficult to share when the team is expanding, or maybe new set of folks are coming and they want to build something on top of this product, or you're moving from a legacy mode to a transformation mode. So things to keep in mind: every decision has a context. As I said earlier, that many times a decision may have been taken because at that time there was some regulatory reason, or maybe the organization was undergoing some kind of change, or they were trying to adopt a certain methodology, a certain process which affected this decision. So it's very important to realize that every decision has a context, and it's not always very purely product management decision or a technology decision. The other one is every decision needs a review. So you may not be blocked for a review, but it's good that if you are able to record the decision, share it with everyone so that they are aware of the reason why that decision is being taken at that moment of time and what's the context behind it. And finally, a decision should have a scope. There are no everlasting decisions when it comes to products, right? Products evolve, they pivot. So a decision has been made, has a scope. Hey, this decision is there for the scope of MVP, maybe a couple of few releases. And after some time, that constraint or that expectation may change of the product, and thus that decision scope ends. So it's very important to realize that also. And every decision has a consequence. I mean, that's the obvious one. But it's very important to think of consequences with the ways other functions. This decision may have this kind of consequence for the technology team, for the support team, for the operations team. All those things are very important to be thought of and recorded. Again, I will go with the principle that sometimes sufficient is more important than complete. So you may not have the perfect analysis, you may not have perfectly recorded everything when it comes to the context, the review, the scope, and the consequences, but at least you put something out there, something which you felt was important at the time of writing, and it's a very important thing, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10 years down the line, right? So what does a decision record look like? Well, it should have a name. You could name it with a code. So for example, I like to give 001, 002, so it becomes very easy to correlate it, and many times it becomes very easy for these IDs to be used in the tools and referred to in some cases in some conversation. 001, kind of a hint of what I expect the number of decisions could be. They've not gone into hundreds, but probably 20s for a very major enterprise product. The date, obviously, and status. So while the decision is still being reviewed and it hasn't been closed, it's in the status open, and after that either it is accepted or it is rejected. And that's a very interesting thing to recall, that not only accepted decisions have to be recorded, also the rejected ones, that because rejection always happens again, it has a context and a scope. Maybe in future, at that time, that kind of decision may make sense and people may want to bring that idea back. So it's very important to record both of them. Scope, I mentioned, it's very important to call out the scope. There's nothing, very few things which decisions which are for the scope of the whole product. And again, what it also hints at is that the decisions that we're recording here are very specific decisions. We chose technology A over B. We chose this feature to be deprecated. Very, very specific decisions that were made. The decision itself, the consequences around it, and review trigger. What I mean here is that after, at what point should we go back and look again at the decision we have made? Especially if you rejected something, at what point do you want to go and look at it again? If even if something was accepted, maybe there was a scope, next 3 releases, for example, right? So at the end of the 3rd release, maybe we come back and look at the decision. So when should the review of this happen? So maybe you can have some hint around the trigger and authors, right? Other than these authors becoming point of contact, many times, these documents have a very long life and they almost like become your signatures, and people know you. And I've seen sometimes people being little reluctant to put in their names, because hey, what if it was a bad decision? Everyone will know that I made it. If it's a bad decision, people will know already, so don't worry too much about it, right? So what I have done is I have also, as usual, created a sample, and it's a Google document. If you are signed in, you can always make a copy in your own drive, or you can download it as in different formats and fill it up. So this is what the document typically looks like. It's a very small document. For example, in my startup, at one time I was thinking that because people put very unsafe passwords, very common phrases in the password, maybe if we ask them to fill 2 passwords, the first one could be very common, the second one could be very common, but together maybe they increase the entropy, maybe they were difficult to guess. So we took a decision that we'll have 2 passwords instead of 1 during registration and login. Ultimately, it was rejected, and the scope was for web interface only, and the context was that non-tech savvy users find it hard to enter long passwords and hate rules like put a small case, put a cap lock, put a special characters. And sometimes it's hard to remember, so they'll always end up writing it somewhere and putting it as sticky. And this was in 2016. One of the ideas being tried was we'll ask them to fill password twice with just a minimum set of characters as a criteria. We did the decision, we did a lot of research around it, we tried different things. There was a discussion on Stack Exchange on it, and finally it was rejected, and the consequence was that we had a novel idea which could have led to a very unique experience. Maybe it would have helped the startup stand out. So we lost that opportunity, but on the other hand, it was not that a great decision, so we rejected it. And the trigger point was whenever there are change in login methodologies, At that time, we can come back to this and see if some things have changed and if we want to revisit this idea. So I would like to know what kind of decision logs you maintain. Are they similar to this or little different? And if little different, do share in comments what the format is, what the headings are, and everyone else will benefit from your methodology. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.